I'm Logan. I'm 19 years old and I'm studying to be a doctor. I'm from Texas, but now I live in New York City for college. My parents are in Dallas, where my dad works as a surgeon at a university hospital, and my mom stays home. After high school, I moved to New York and I've been on my own for about 4 months now, since July. My dad's work inspired me to study hard and get into medical school. But since coming here, I haven't had the typical college experience I hoped for. I've been focused on my studies, which is important, but I also wanted to hang out with friends and join clubs. Unfortunately, money has been tight, so I couldn't do those things. My parents pay my tuition, but I have to pay for everything else like rent and living expenses. To make ends meet, I've been doing different jobs like tutoring, working at events, and even at a bar. But it's been tough. I often have to switch between shifts at different jobs just to get by each month. Weekends are when I try to earn the most money. I never really had a day off. It was tough both mentally and physically. I get sleepy during class, and when I come home late at night, I'm too tired to study. I'm worried I might fail my classes and have to repeat the year if things keep going like this. Studying should be my top priority, but I'm struggling to focus. I felt anxious and desperate, so I called my mom for some financial help, even if it was just a little. My dad is hardly ever home because he's busy with his job, so my mom handles the finances. I thought they could help because my dad earns well, but my mom said they couldn't afford to send extra money. Many of my friends get financial help from their parents, and I wished I had that too. Despite all this, I kept working hard at my jobs. The midterms came, but I hadn't studied enough, and as I expected, I had to retake some exams. After finishing the retests in early August, my summer vacation began. I'm planning to work a lot during this long break to earn as much money as possible. Once summer is over, I'll focus more on my studies. That means cutting down on work hours, which should help my finances. To save money, I've been eating cheap foods like instant noodles, bread, and discounted meals. I also use my bike instead of paying for transportation. Growing up, I never had to worry about money, so this new life of financial struggle is unexpected and tough. Despite all this, I stay in touch with college friends through texts. Seeing their fun photos makes me realize how different our lives are, even though we go to the same university. My friends often invited me out, but I had to reluctantly decline because I didn't have the money or the time. Let's go somewhere that doesn't cost anything, I suggested. One of our classmates messaged me, "Are you sure you're okay? You always seem tired at school, and I think you're working too much." My friend was concerned about me. I've got the physical stamina, and I need to earn my living expenses. Let's meet up once school starts again, I replied. After that, I went to work at the bar as usual, but something happened shortly after. I collapsed during my shift. It was a busy Friday with lots of customers, and as I was carrying drinks, I suddenly felt dizzy. I don't remember much after that, but when I came to, I found myself in the hospital. According to the doctor, I collapsed due to exhaustion and malnutrition. I received treatment and was allowed to go home the same day. I immediately called my boss at the bar to apologize. My boss explained that after I collapsed, he had called my name, but I was too out of it to respond, so he called an ambulance. He had also contacted my parents. "You've been taking on a lot of shifts, and I relied too much on that. I'm sorry about that. I want you to rest easy for the rest of the month," my boss said. This meant a cut in my income. As I rode the subway home from the hospital, I wondered if I should take on more tutoring jobs. I found myself at a loss. I was supposed to work at the bar the next day, but that suddenly turned into a day off. I decided to quietly stay in bed today. While checking my phone, I noticed a message from my friend that I had missed while I was unconscious. I replied and explained why my response was delayed. Upon learning about my situation, my friend decided to come over. He bought groceries at the supermarket and made spaghetti for me. While eating the meal he had kindly prepared, our conversation turned to the topic of living expenses for someone living alone. When I mentioned that I wasn't receiving any financial support from home, my friend was surprised. "That's why you've been working so hard. Your dad's a doctor. You should be getting some support." "No," I explained. "I asked Mom, and she said they're barely managing with just my tuition." "But you're an only child, right? Maybe if you ask, they could send a little support," my friend suggested. My mom said even a small amount of support was out of the question. "No way, that doesn't make sense. I hate to say this, but maybe your dad is sick and can't work," my friend speculated. Thinking it over, I said, "My dad is a doctor and used to drive a luxury car. Our house is in an upscale neighborhood, and I went to private schools my whole life. So why would mom suddenly say they have no money? Suddenly worried, I immediately messaged my mom. Are you both okay? She replied after a while. We're fine, but I couldn't relax, thinking maybe they were just saying that to keep me from worrying. Since I had planned to go home for the holidays, I decided to talk to my parents about this. After thanking my friend, he said, I'll be waiting for some souvenirs. I felt grateful to have such a friend. The holiday season came and I took the cheapest flight I could find back home. I could only stay for a night and a day because of my job, but I was looking forward to it. When I arrived, my parents greeted me at the door. My dad seemed surprised when he saw me. You've lost a lot of weight. Really? I hadn't noticed myself, but apparently I looked quite different. My mom was also taken aback and fell silent. For lunch, my mom had prepared things like salad, soup, and chicken wings, and for the first time in a long while, the three of us sat down to eat together. As soon as we sat down, my dad looked worried and asked, You look thinner. Are you eating properly? I told him the truth. Not really. It's been a while since I had such a luxurious meal. What do you usually eat? Cafeteria food? My dad asked. Nah, the cafeteria is too expensive for me. Is it that expensive? It's about $5 or so. My dad looked puzzled. Is the money I've been sending enough for you? Confused, I responded. Huh? I haven't been getting any money. I finally told my dad. What do you mean? So you mean to tell me you haven't received any money for the past 4 months? He asked, shocked. I haven't received any, I replied. Have you really been sending money? I had asked your mom to transfer $2,000 every month into your account, Dad said, surprised. Really? I was surprised. Mom told me that your finances were tight and that she couldn't afford to send any money. I explained. Dad looked perplexed. We have enough money. Paisley, have you been sending money to Logan properly? He asked Mom. Mom looked down silently. I was worried that maybe Dad got sick or something and couldn't work, and that's why the money wasn't coming. No, I've been working as usual, Dad assured. Really? That's a relief, I said, somewhat relieved. But then why hadn't any money been sent to me? I was baffled. Cassie, what's going on? Dad pressed Mom. Still refusing to meet our eyes, Mom remained silent. Come on, don't stay silent. Can you explain? Dad insisted. When Dad pressed her, Mom finally said quietly, I haven't sent any money. What? I haven't sent any money to Logan, she admitted. Hearing this, both my dad and I were stunned. What? Why not? Dad asked, incredulous. There are just so many expenses, Mom replied. What kind of expenses? Isn't our home mortgage already paid off? Dad questioned. Realizing she could no longer hide the truth, Mom dropped a bombshell. I've been keeping the money for myself, she confessed. I was dumbstruck. I read online that medical students can earn more than regular students with tutoring jobs, so I thought you'd be okay. I asked you to send me even just a small amount of money, but honestly, I didn't realize you were that strapped for cash, Mom explained. My mom continued in a matter-of-fact tone. There was a call from Logan's workplace recently saying you collapsed from overwork. I was also shocked to see how thin you've become. What? Logan collapsed. What happened? It seemed my dad hadn't been informed about the recent events, so I explained. You collapsed from overwork and malnutrition. Yeah, but it wasn't anything serious, I added. Paisley, why didn't you tell me? My dad asked, clearly upset. I'm sorry. I was afraid he'd find out I wasn't sending the money, my mom said without any sign of guilt. This is outrageous. Logan had to work until he collapsed because he didn't have any money, Dad exclaimed. I didn't mean any harm, my mom defended herself. What have you been using all the money for? Dad confronted her. After a brief pause, she finally spoke up. Well, actually, I have some debts. What? Those were unimaginable words coming from her, who always seemed to perfectly manage the household and even took care of the garden flowers, I thought. The money was used to pay off my debts, Mom continued. Debt? How much do you owe? Dad asked, clearly in disbelief. Mom, still looking down, said quietly, about $100,000. $100,000. I was shocked by the amount. My dad sighed deeply. Why do you have so much debt? I got into gambling, Mom confessed. Basically, I had gotten myself into gambling debts without our knowledge. Why would you even start something like that? Dad asked, holding his head in his hands. About 2 years ago, I started gambling just to kill time. I won some money and it felt really good at first. I'd only used small amounts, but going to the casino became a habit, and I started betting more and more. I couldn't stop, and it led to that amount. I had never gambled, so I couldn't understand why she couldn't stop. Yes, I kept trying to win back what I lost, but I ended up losing more often than winning. I even dipped into our savings, she admitted. So you've spent more than just the debt amount? Dad yelled at her. How much of our savings did you use? He demanded. About $30,000, Mom confessed. I stopped withdrawing more because I thought you would find out. She looked like she was about to cry. If you'd talked to me about it earlier, it might have been better. With that amount, you could have worked part-time and paid it back little by little, right? Dad said. I absolutely don't want to work part-time, she said emphatically. Get a grip. You racked up the debt yourself. He was visibly angry. I've been a stay-at-home mom for so long. There's no way I can work now. That's why I borrowed money from payday lenders, she confessed. I was stunned by her selfish reasoning. Then the interest piled up and the debt just grew. I got involved with various lenders, and now I can't make payments anywhere. I'm completely overwhelmed. Dad sighed again. Are you still gambling in this situation? Yes, I see no choice, Mom admitted. Then I'll pay off the debt for you, Dad said decisively. Really? Mom stood up from her chair, her face brightening with joy. I knew you would help me. She rushed towards him, looking moved. However, things didn't turn out as favorably for her. But this is your severance. Let's get a divorce, Dad said abruptly. What? I was surprised. Divorce? I will never agree to a divorce, Mom said firmly. Her face turned from joy to terror, as if she had been cast down from heaven to hell. You continued gambling even knowing Logan was struggling, right? You kept borrowing money, endangering the family, Dad pointed out. That's true, but I can't continue as a family with a wife who prioritizes gambling over her son, he insisted. No way, she finally burst into tears. I'll never gamble again. Please forgive me, she pleaded. But he seemed resolute. Your gambling is likely an addiction. You'll need to see a psychiatrist and undergo long-term treatment. It's not uncommon for people to relapse into gambling during treatment. I'm not addicted. I can stop anytime, she protested. No, if this continues, we could all end up destitute. I have to separate, not just for my sake, but to stop burdening Logan any further. I'll stop from tomorrow, she insisted, but she did not seem to grasp the severity of her inability to stop gambling. I was deeply anxious about the amount of debt and my mom's pathological gambling behavior. In exchange for paying your severance, there will be no division of assets, my dad stated. What? I can't agree to those terms. If you don't pay back the debt, they might seize your account. She fell silent. I never imagined coming home after a long time would lead to this situation. I was just unsettled by my parents fighting. No, Dad, don't you think we can hold off on deciding about divorce? Maybe take some time to cool off and think it over, I suggested. I'm sorry, Logan, but that's not possible, he said calmly. I thought he might have decided on divorce in a fit of despair, but that doesn't seem to be the case. Lunch ended in a heavy atmosphere, and I went to my room. I lay down on the sofa, but I could still hear my parents arguing. It wasn't much of an argument. My mom was hysterically screaming, and my dad responded firmly. I got so fed up with college and home that I just went to sleep out of frustration. The next morning, my mom looked awful, probably from crying all night. I had planned to stay at home a bit longer, but the oppressive atmosphere made me decide to leave early. My dad drove me to the airport. Logan, I'm sorry for all the trouble I've caused, he apologized to me. No, it's not your fault, Dad. I'm grateful for the chance to attend medical school, I reassured him. I'll start transferring an allowance directly to your account from now on, so don't worry, he said. Yeah, thanks, Dad. It really helps, I replied. I know things are tough, but take care, he said as he dropped me off. I flew back to New York. The rest of the summer vacation was busy with work, passing by in a flash. Still, I was constantly worried about my parents. A few months later, I heard that my mom finally agreed to the divorce. My dad's steadfastness broke her resistance. As previously discussed, my dad took on her debts, and in return, there was no asset division in their divorce agreement. I have mixed feelings about my parents getting divorced, but it's not all bad news. Now that I'm receiving an allowance from my dad, I've been able to cut back on work and focus more on my studies. I might even get to hang out with friends. I heard from my grandmother on my mother's side that despite the divorce over her gambling, my mom was back at the slot machines every day. She quickly racked up more debt. Her family couldn't afford to cover her debts, so my mom reluctantly started working part-time. She's currently attending therapy to overcome her gambling addiction.